Hello, everyone. How are you? My name is Juan Carlos de la Vela, CEO and co founder of InDigital. And today we're going to talk in this webinar about what a CDP is, what it's used for, exactly how you can use it to segment and significantly enhance customer communication, and how it helps our company improve communication and segmentation in the messages we'll send through a variety of multiple communication channels. I truly hope it's both interesting and insightful, and that you can learn how to implement a CDP in different phases and how it can provide significant strategic value to your company to improve this communication and audience creation with your valued customer base. Let's get into it. First of all, well, InDigital, as you know, is an AI customer engagement platform that allows you to communicate with your customers. When looking at the various services we provide, InDigital has a CDP that gives you the ability to manage and synchronize this data with different events. And now we'll see this in a bit more detail. How to use the different functionalities of InDigital. First of all, well, the agenda will follow. First, we'll describe and explain what a CDP is, what information the CDP stores, how to use it. For example, in the case of customers who have an e-commerce, for instance, with Shopify, how we synchronize that information with Shopify. Okay, but it also works for any other type of, let's say, it's not just for e-commerce. We'll see cases later in health companies, companies from different sectors, education companies, retail companies, how this CDP will synchronize the information and how all of that helps me. Well, to create different journeys that are personalized for each customer. Okay. First of all, what is a CDP? Well, a CDP, as you know, stands for Customer Data Platform. It's a tool that collects all your customer data from different sites, from different places, and unifies it in one single place. So you can, let's say, understand them better and communicate with them, your customers, more effectively. Okay. Therefore, a CDP is like a file for each customer where all the information is gathered: what I've bought, what I've seen on the web, what products I've visited, what emails I've opened, what communications have been sent to me, and I've opened. Everything is collected in one single place, okay? Imagine a user who visits your website or downloads your mobile app. Suddenly, they open an email, buy a product, talk to support. It works perfectly, right? So all of that valuable information, all those touch points, if we didn't have a CDP, what we'd have is information that would be separated into, let's say, completely separate communication channels. And with a CDP, what we have is everything unified into a single customer profile, okay? To put it one way, what is a CDP for? It's for understanding your customers better, for creating audiences that meet certain criteria, for personalizing messages, and for automating marketing. All this might sound quick, but these are very important points in the end for a marketing director, for a company that wants to communicate. That is to say, we're all in some way, let's say, saturated with receiving emails that we often don't open, but they keep sending me emails through the same communication channel. We're saturated with receiving short messages when short messages are a channel that has a lot of fraud today. And you're no longer able to click on a link in an SMS because you don't know. You're not sure if that SMS comes from the brand it claims to be or not. Therefore, it's very important to communicate through different communication channels. And it's very important to segment very well who we communicate value to at each moment and what value we communicate to each person. Okay, so this part is very important. In a CDP, you have different events. In the end, users interact with your brand and generate different events in real time. Therefore, when we talk about events, it's not the same for a retail business. A customer who has points of sale. You can visit a store and automatically detect it that this customer has visited that store, and it can be collected in the CDP. You can also view a product both on the website and in the mobile app, or make a purchase, okay? Just as you can also make a transaction, that is, you can make a purchase in real time at a point of sale, or you can also call the call center to, let's say, order a product, or to file a complaint, or to ask for help with a specific product, okay? And at the same time, you can manage different communication channels. As we said before, such as email, WhatsApp, or the various communication channels you have with your companies, okay? And this part is very important because in the end, we have to define very well which events we want to feed into the CDP. This can be phased, meaning you don't have to stop and say that the CDP will be an 8-month or 12-month project, because implementing a CDP means you want to have all the events. You can start little by little, it can be phased, and you'll add information to the CDP over time. The important thing is that your CDP is scalable, so you can keep adding information, so that this information you add will allow you to know your customers better, okay? And this is very important when it comes to communicating with our customers, okay? If we look a bit at the differences between, let's say, I'd like the differences between a CDP, a CRM, and a DMP to be clear. In the end, we often have many acronyms that are different systems, and although they all work with customer data, each one serves a different purpose. Ultimately, a CRM manages relationships, a CDP unifies data, and a DMP works with anonymous audiences for advertising, okay? Returning to this point, that is, what a CRM does is manage, let's say, the direct relationship with customers, okay? You have known data like name, email, phone number, company, or address, and so on. In the end, a CRM's primary use is for sales and commercial follow-up, okay? However, what a CDP does is unify all of a customer's data into a single profile, okay? Therefore, we have known data plus behavioral data, what products I've seen, how I behave on the web, how I behave in the app, what products I see in the app, what my email open rate is, how many communications you've sent me, etc. Therefore, the CDP's primary use is for marketing and for personalizing and automating communications, okay? The DMP is used to manage anonymous audiences, especially for advertising. Therefore, you have anonymous data there like cookies, identifiers, okay? And its main focus is on advertising campaigns. In the end, everything like programmatic campaigns and display campaigns will be stored in the DMP. The objectives, as I mentioned, are vary. Here you can see an example in the image of how, with all of this valuable data that you have gathered, in the end, what you really want is to, let's say, unify and consolidate it completely so that the data is consistent, synchronized, and allows me to take strategic actions and carry out personalized communications with my customers. Therefore, it's very important that we collect the data we want based on, as I said, the specific sector in which we work. We'll have various types of specific data, and I need to collect all of that data to unify it and process it in real time. If we take a look, we've decided to have, let's say, a basic CDP and one we call CDP Pro. Right? The basic one is essentially about gathering customer information. That customer information we have allows me to personalize communications, but the CDP Pro is when you have, besides the basic, all the events associated with a customer. Orders that have been placed, products viewed, items left in abandoned carts, and products seen. Actions taken on the website, support tickets opened, basically all the events that are linked to a customer's history. This will enable me to gain a much deeper understanding of and profile each customer. And with all of that newly unified data, it will let me personalize my communications much more effectively. So it's absolutely essential to choose a CDP that provides the flexibility to scale up as we expand by, let's say, incorporating a wider variety of new events. This slide is a bit, let's say, technical, okay? Because a CDP can have different architectures, right? But it's important, let's say, to choose a CDP. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most all-encompassing and detailed one, because with a CDP, the most important thing is carefully choosing how it fits my business, what specific data I'll feed into it, and we don't really need to get into projects costing 500,000 euros or even $1 million that last for years. Right? It's important, let's say, not to get into very long projects because those projects can somehow stall everything. They can, let's say, be impacted if it takes too long to get the information needed for personalization. So, in the end, the key question is okay, I have a CDP. How does it connect with my current tools? Okay, I can have, as we said before, an e-commerce site, which I can have with my own tool. I can have it on Shopify. I can have it on Magento, let's say. I can have it on PrestaShop, on different tools that allow me to have an e-commerce site. Okay, I can have my CRM. I can have my marketing tools to communicate. But in the end, if the CDP doesn't integrate well, it's useless because it won't have any data. And in the end, what we want is to join online data and join offline data, resolve duplicates, identify users across different devices. That is to say, the CDP is not for anonymous users. With a CDP, I have registered users who allow me to have the entire customer history. Ultimately, the real value of a CDP lies in having a single version of the customer truth. Okay, the goal, as we said before, is to create segments, launch campaigns, automate customer journeys, and it's not enough to just have data. There are many companies that have a very good CDP, but then can't activate it. They can't activate that CDP in real time. And that is ultimately a mistake in that sense, because what's the use of having a lot of data if you can't then use it to segment and communicate through the right channel? I mean, having a lot of data, but if I'm only going to send emails later, well, it seems to me, in a way, I think it's a mistake in my opinion, because in the end, email is a saturated channel. And you ultimately have to create journeys that allow you to orchestrate and allow you to communicate value to each customer through a different channel. In the end, we all have different communication channels on a smartphone. On a smartphone, some of us use, there are countries and regions where WhatsApp is used a lot, okay? Like Europe, Latin America, Asia. But however, in the United States, for example, WhatsApp is not a channel that has a very high penetration. However, there are other countries where there's a higher download of the mobile app, there's a higher use of the website, there are a series of channels that I have to know, and it is very important to comply with all the security rules because we are storing data. And this part is very important, where InDigital also has all the necessary certificates for full GDPR compliance, data control, and ensuring that all data is well encrypted, safely stored, and re-encrypted. This ensures that this data can avoid having a major security breach where you could accidentally expose sensitive customer data to a malicious hacker who could use it against me. Therefore, it is very important when we choose a CDP, let's say, to know very well the privacy and data protection compliance and what security rules that CDP has. Because it's very important that the CDP doesn't just manage data, the CDP also manages trust. And this part is very important. If we move on to what an example would look like, in this case, for instance, we're looking at the case of how it's used in the case of Shopify. Shopify allows me to save data, okay? It lets me have customer data. It lets me have orders. And I've used Shopify because Shopify is one of the most used tools in different places like e-commerce. Many people use Shopify, and Shopify allows me to save all the customer data. It lets me see, as I said, orders, It lets me manage my stock. It lets me manage my website with different templates. But these, in the end, Shopify is an e-commerce, as we were saying before, right? It's an e-commerce. It's the e-commerce, I think, of one of the leaders. Okay, we're not gonna, let's say, defend Shopify or any others, but let's just say that Shopify is one of the most used in different regions. And this part is very important because how we integrate Shopify so that everything is automated is something very distinctive and very important. In the end, from Shopify, I have a lot of information. Stock, connection with my ERP, I have my website content, I have my orders, I have my customer data. And in the end, what we've done at Indigitall is to be able to synchronize from Shopify, which we can do with any other. Okay, I insist it's not a critical issue that it's Shopify. The goal is to be able to synchronize your e-commerce so that you generate real-time events. These real-time events, let's say, they don't go through the CDP to create segmented audiences, but real-time events would be, I just registered on the website or the mobile app, I just made a purchase, I just abandoned the cart, I viewed products. All of those are events that require a real-time action. Well, what we've done is have a plugin within Shopify that allows connecting Shopify with Indigitall to create real-time events and allow me to manage those journeys. But as I say, the important thing is not just by email. Today, 90% of companies or 95% of companies that use Shopify only use it for email. They don't have alternative channels to communicate with customers, and this is very important. As I said before, we have to choose which channel interacts the most, let's say, which has the most engagement with your customers. Therefore, it's very important not to depend solely on email because email is a very saturated channel. Even many emails end up in the spam folder and so on, okay? Therefore, it's very important to choose a marketing automation tool that allows me to create these triggers, that allows me to have these events, but that allows me to communicate through different communication channels, okay? So on one hand, at the top, we have real-time events, but on the other hand, at the bottom, what we have is a synchronization of what would be customer data, purchase data, customer behavior data that I have, which are synchronized with my CDP. This synchronization could be practically in real time, or some companies choose to do it every X hours. Hey, I'm going to sync the data every 3 hours, every hour, every 24 hours. Why? Because this data is what will allow me to later impact customers and create audiences based on behavior, based on customer purchases. Therefore, it's very important that we differentiate between the two types of communications there are. Real-time, event-based communications and communications based on behaviors, say purchases, actions I've taken with those customers that allow me to create audiences, allow me to create customer segments, customer audiences to personalize for. That is, hey, who has seen these products and hasn't bought from me in a month? Well, to that audience, I can send a personalized customer journey that allows me to sell more to those customers, do an upselling or do a cross-selling to those customers. This part is very important because, I repeat, it's not based on sending emails. It's based on creating a personalized journey for those customers. What do we have in different cases? To not just talk about, say, a customer that's an e-commerce, well, imagine a customer that's a retailer who also has points of sale, both online and offline. Well, here we're going to have different events. And in this case, I have events associated with a new registration. I just registered with a QR code at a point of sale at the checkout because they told me to register and enter my data so that I get a certain benefit, a discount code, for example. I just made a purchase and I just paid. Or also online events, right? I just abandoned the cart. I've seen the website and I've seen certain products, but then I don't buy them. Or I go to a point of sale and I do different actions at the point of sale and I leave. This allows me to have all this information, which are different events, saved in the CDP so that they allow me to create personalized communications, segmented communications. Therefore, it's very important to be able to act on this data, to take actions on it. through different communication channels. I repeat, it's not just email, it's not SMS, because SMS, as I say, there's more and more fraud and there's more distrust by users in it being a secure channel where you click on a link that comes inside an SMS. But we can all have WhatsApp with a verified profile with the blue check that gives us confidence that it's the brand, or we have notifications because I've downloaded the mobile app of this retail brand, okay? Or I can use RCS, which is a more secure channel than SMS, which is already available in some countries. Indigitall also offers it, and therefore I can use RCS to carry out communications. Therefore, depending on the customer sector, here we've put another example of what would be the education sector. In the education sector, I go to the website. I want to see what to study. I want to see what degrees are offered. I want to see different programs where I can do a master's, postgraduate, or a degree. I'm able to see my exam results. I can interact with the system and ask questions through various different, let's say, platforms, such as the web, the dedicated mobile application, or WhatsApp. Or I enter the virtual campus, okay? And in the end, I have a life on campus where I have different events and where I perform different actions with the users. Therefore, it's important to highlight that depending on the sector where we are, when it comes to working, that particular sector is going to be handling different events. And these events must be, as I say, actionable. They must allow me to know my user better, each one of them in a personalized way. And it'll allow me to create audiences to target and to provide value to through different communication channels. Okay? Let's look a bit at the indigitall part. Indigitall is, in the end, a communication platform that, as we said before, offers a CDP. And here you see what would be the console from which I can create customer journey. And these customer journeys are going to be, let me go back. These customer journeys are going to be personalized and will allow me to filter and create audiences from these customer journeys. In these journeys that I've filtered based on data coming from the CDP, I'll be able to perform actions on them. And therefore, it's very important that these actions, that these journeys I've created, allow me to use different communication channels, as we were saying before. It's not just email. It would also be a push. It would also be a WhatsApp. It would be SMS. And in the end, it allows you to be more efficient because ultimately, a journey allows you not to target the user through a specific channel, but to target them through different communication channels. And based on their behavior, in the end, what I have is, based on their behavior, what I'm going to do is interact with them. Okay? In the end, it's important to have all those triggers and have a user behavior based on whether they click, don't click, and even have an A-B test where I can choose which is the best channel for each person. That is, in the end, for all users, I don't have to send an email, but I could ultimately. Keep learning based on artificial intelligence. We use AI to learn from each user. We use AI to target each user at a different time, and we use AI to know each person better. Therefore, the CDP is the data that will allow me to segment users, but then which channel to use? I'm going to use it through the intelligent journey that will allow me to decide which channel I use to target each customer. And this part is really important to be able to impact each user in a different way. In the end, these journeys are a combination of channels, and I'll be able to have different journeys with all the analytics we have in digital. I'll be able to see the behavior of these journeys with analytical data, and I'll be able to see, as we said before, how I create a journey. I can create different journeys in digital. And in the end, the important thing is that these journeys are using all possible communication channels. As we were saying before, right? This part is very, very important because in the end, a smartphone has different communication channels, okay? Finally, when we talk about a CDP and how to choose a CDP, let's say there are different parameters that help me choose a CDP, okay? If we were to look at important parameters when choosing a CDP, the first one would be, for example, latency, okay, which is the response time. In the end, what latency tells me is how long it takes the system to process and activate a piece of data. If it's real time, in milliseconds, okay? And I could also do it with batch processes, okay? But the ideal thing is that latency defines whether you can impact now or when it's already too late. As we said before, it's very important to know that latency because it's what's going to define what actions I can perform in real time and what actions I can perform, let's say, with a delay. Therefore, you always have to differentiate behavior because in the end, we're human. We want actions many times. When we want to buy something, we buy it now, and we don't want to buy it in 3 days. Therefore, defining this latency in real time is very important to be able to impact a user based on their behavior. The next key parameter is processing, how that data is handled. It can be processed in streaming or in batch. A modern CDP should be able to combine streaming and batch depending on the use case, as we've presented with InDigital. How do we resolve? How do we provide resolution for the identity part? That is, that you allow me to identify a user on the web, in the app, so that if I've logged in on the web, well, I can have the same experience as if I can continue the purchase in the mobile application, and that it allows me to have a good identity resolution. So that this profile, let's say mine, has a single customer profile, but then I'm working across different communication channels. Scalability. The ability to grow without breaking is very important. How much event volume can I have per day? What is the number of users I can have? What is the peak traffic? Therefore, it's very important that the CDP must scale with you without skyrocketing costs or losing performance. What architecture do I have for that CDP? If you have SDKs like we do it InDigital for both the app and the web, we have APIs, we use REST APIs securely, they're robust APIs, you have SDKs for web and mobile, and it also allows for webhooks. And in the end, a CDP is only as powerful as its ability to connect with your ecosystem. And every single customer's ecosystem is different. But that shouldn't stop us. It should make you grow and help you even implement it in phases. But the CDP you choose must allow you to grow with it. What data model do I have and what flexibility does it allow? It should be a flexible schema, support custom events, and be easy to add new sources. It's very important that my CDP isn't rigid, but allows me to grow because my business has to be dynamic. Therefore, it's very important. And the last critical point, which we mentioned before, is security and data governance. All sensitive data must be thoroughly encrypted, maintain strict access control protocols, and have comprehensive data auditing procedures in place. Furthermore, the company should hold official ISO certifications and various other security certificates, because data shouldn't just be useful, it absolutely must be protected and carefully controlled. So, in the end, our commitment is to provide a scalable CDP, to provide a flexible CDP. To provide a CDP that seamlessly adapts to the needs of the company with a setup that gives me the ability to easily connect many different sources. The setup will be calculated and priced specifically based on the sources the client wants to connect and the unique combination of different communication channels I'll have later in the marketing automation platform. And finally, for the CDP, I'll have a monthly fee that includes my SLA and 24/7 response, which is very important. Meaning being able to respond to the company 24/7, being able to support this client's growth with different use cases. And this CDP allows me, in a way, to grow with me in different phases, and then it will allow me to grow in the number of events. Therefore, I'll be able to, let's say my monthly fee could grow based on the events I have, based on the increased use of filters, increments, data consumption, and how long I'm going to keep the data stored. This part is just as important because in the end, this data can be stored for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years. How long do we keep customer data? It's the customer history. For example, I want to run a campaign now for customers who bought from me on Black Friday last year, spent over $100, and bought this type of product. Well, for that, I need to have a CDP that allows me to save those campaigns in that beta. Therefore, this part is very important. I think it's very important to choose a company that supports you, a company that allows you to grow. And I want to say that we're at your disposal for any questions to analyze how to help you grow, and above all, how to help you personalize. I think it's very important because we're all tired of receiving mail, of receiving emails that don't add value, that don't know me, that don't know my behavior, that don't know which products I'm interested in. And in the end, that's because I don't have a CDP that allows me to better personalize for each customer. Every customer is different. Each person has different tastes, different habits, and this personalization is very important, as is this way of providing value to each person on a smartphone, which we all carry in our hands. But it's very important to communicate through the right channel. And you have to choose a tool that allows you to activate that customer, to communicate with that customer through the right channel. Whether it's email, RCS, WhatsApp, app push, web push, or in-app. With all the communication channels we have on a smartphone, it's very important to personalize and distinguish each customer's behavior. And for that, AI helps us to get to know each person better. Therefore, we're at your disposal for any questions, to be able to meet, to analyze, to be able to phase your project, and to be able to help you grow. That's all. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you.